Kalen DeBoer coming over from Washington, Alabama. I think we all were very curious about how this one was going to shake out. 2 weeks left till signing day, Drew. They've taken some blows. They're still ranked number 3 inside the top 5. They have 21 commitments. Headliners, 5-star quarterback Keelan Russell, number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, and Michael Carroll, DeJohn Lee, one of the best defensive backs in the country from California, Ty Haywood, Ivan Taylor, who they just flipped from Michigan. So, Drew, do you have them as a overachiever on schedule or underachieving?
I think I'm grading a little easy today. I have overachieving here. And Cooper, kind of what sparked this whole conversation, I was on CBS Sports HQ on Monday, and they asked me about Alabama after they lost top 247 running back Anthony Rogers. He opens his recruitment back up. Sounds like he likely is going to end up at Ohio State. And they're like, hey, Alabama's got 13 decommitments. And we've noted, hey, Nick Saban, I think the most ever under him was about 7. I don't think it was normally just 1 or 2 a cycle. Is there a reason to panic? And I kind of pushed back and I said, no. Alabama right now, number 3 in the rankings. And they just flipped Ivan Taylor from Michigan. I think the biggest thing for DeBoer here down the stretch is he's going to have to play some defense. With that being said, when Kalen DeBoer was hired, he comes over from Washington. I had plenty of questions about him as a recruiter in the SEC. Was he going to be able to field a class that resembled the ones Nick Saban had built over the years, right? I mean, Alabama kind of got what Alabama wanted. And in-state recruiting has certainly struggled. But I do think this recruiting class has a ton of star power, and they've had to go outside of the SEC footprint to get it. They're in California, a ton of kids committed there. But Cooper, Kalen DeBoer, when he was at Washington, this is where his recruiting class is finished. 95th, 26th, and 41st. You look up right now, they're sitting number 3 in the rankings. We'll see where they finish. Again, have to play defense down the stretch. But I did not expect this from Kalen DeBoer, not in year 1. And I get it, the Alabama logo, it carries some weight, certainly with these kids. But there was certainly, I could have talked myself into a scenario where Alabama's sitting like 15th in the rankings, and they're not right now.
Yeah, they came out hot. And listen, you're going to pay Courtney Morgan that much money. This is what you would expect, right? And it's not all on Courtney. It's on Kalen DeBoer, that relationship. But, they're under a microscope. It kind of felt similar to what LSU, Brian Kelly, went through when he came down from Notre Dame to LSU. And people said, well, he's never cut his teeth in the SEC. What is it going to look like? There's so much more urgency to say that, hey, I can handle this. I can do this at a high level. So I think year 1, I don't want to say it's an outlier, but you expect them to kind of come out with a little bit of something to prove. Year 2, year 3, that, Drew, I think is going to be a little bit more of a test. Here's the thing that I find super fascinating. They only have 2 players from the state of Alabama in this class. Correct me if I'm wrong. Alabama's got to be, top 6 or 7 in terms of states per capita on draft picks, right? So you look at that, and then you look at Auburn, and not everything on the field is equal. We know that. Auburn has 11 players in their class from the state of Alabama. A lot of these guys playing early, Drew, that you look at. Sylvester Smith, Caleb Harris last year. They took 11 last year. And you think about that. And then you look at Alabama and you say, well, they got 7 guys from California. So my thing is, I just talked about Texas A&M. You talked about them having 15 players from the state of Texas. Alabama is not one of those states where you have to go outside and you got to start looking for different guys. Sure, you got to go head to head with the Auburns of the world, Drew. But out of the 15 players, the top 15 players ranked in the state of Alabama, I look back. I mean, there's probably 6 or 7 guys that I would say, okay, those are Alabama caliber prospects. Not everybody can play at Alabama, right? But there are 6, 7 guys that I think can play here. The guys that they walk away with, Micah DeBose, a former top 247 offensive lineman who struggled with his weight, now outside of the top 247, and Mal Waldrop, a legacy that's playing tackle, more than likely going to end up being a guard or a center and a program player. So it doesn't mean that you can't shop somewhere else and get talent like they've done in California. I just wonder, how sustainable is this year over year? And I know what you're going to say here. We kind of saw this with LSU going into the Midwest in their first year, and it was Jackson Howard, and it was they went after the Mickens kid who ended up going to Ohio State, and it's what does that yielded for them, right? that's kind of something in the back of my head that I'm kind of thinking about here. Like, how long can they kind of get away with not shopping in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, or the Southeast, where everybody really kind of gets their groceries from, if that makes sense?
I think you bring up a great point. Like it's not sustainable. And how do you think Nick Saban? Do you think he's kind of disgusted when he just sees he pulls up the 24/7 sports rankings, goes to the state of Alabama and sees that Alabama A just two times? Like he's probably not happy about that. And I looked it up per my research. Alabama eighth annually in NFL draft picks, 8.2 a year. The Yellowhammer State produces. No, Cooper, you're right, and it does remind me of Brian Kelly when he first got there at LSU, and we're kind of like, all right, what is this guy doing? And I think the counterpoint to this though is, hey, USC hasn't built a fence around California. That would be the number 4 NFL draft pick producing state. So hey, kind of you can make the case that it is a little bit of opportunistic recruiting. And the other thing on Alabama, they got Keelan Russell committed, right? Our number 3 player. I think he's had the best season of all the quarterbacks inside the top 247. They got that guy. They flipped him from SMU. A lot of people are interested. That's one that can certainly mask maybe some deficiencies elsewhere.
It's just it's interesting to me because the transition class had 11 players from the state of Alabama, and you're looking at guys like Ryan Williams and Bakwe, Red Morgan, all guys that have contributed early. I just kind of wonder, like, do they try to get back to that? Was this a one-off year where they felt like, hey, we had some relationships out west that we could take advantage of? Drew, the other thing here is, like, they're still battling down the line here for Dejoun Lee. It might be like one of those things where it's like, hey, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. If we're going to have to go spend all our time out west and can't defend our own territory. So pretty interesting there. By the way, had them on schedule for what it's worth. I don't know if I said that.